Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Hi, everyone. Today I am speaking with Rachel Forbes, who is the Executive Director of the Learning Disabilities Society, or LDS. It's a fascinating conversation about some of the different types of learning differences, what you can do as a parent, how you can recognize it, and at the very end, we meet a robot. Hi, Rachel. It is so good to see you. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me and LDS on.
Yeah. So, okay. LDS is the Learning Disabilities Society.
It is. Yeah. We are trying to phase into the Learning Differences Society. And so generally call ourselves LDS as we find that's a little bit more of an inclusive name.
So, yeah, let's talk about that for a second because, you know, the word disability is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I find that the people that, when it comes to learning challenges or learning differences, people don't want to attach the word disability to it. And then even in, in the disabled community, we do want to talk about the word disability, and we do want to own that word, and because the word doesn't have any shame. But how are you finding it in the learning differences community?
Yeah, likewise. I mean, that there are learning disabilities, then there are medical diagnoses to name and identify what those disabilities are, and they happen in our brain, and there is no shame of having them. It's not something that anybody did wrong. It's not, and it's completely something that we have the skills and tools to help people address. So absolutely, there's no shame in that. I think our journey right now with not using the word disability so upfront is because we find families are coming to us in different stages of their own journey of understanding what their child or, potentially other members of their family or them as a guardian need to do to help support their child that they may have recently learned has a different way of learning or an actual learning disability. They might also not yet have that diagnosis. And so we do work with families where there is a suspicion of a learning disability, whether that comes from a teacher, from themselves, from a medical professional. And we work with them on preliminary assessments, can also get them a psychoeducational or neuropsych assessment referral so they can get to that stage where it can be helpful to have a diagnosis for various reasons, from access to funding to just having a better understanding and more medical information about what's going on with that child and how they're learning. But and we find using in our learning centers and online, we try to not put disability up front because we do know a lot of kids have a challenging time thinking that's what I'm coming to right now, or that's what's wrong with me. It's completely not that way. It's about finding the different ways that everybody is learning.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because, this is a huge topic, and I don't know how we're going to, cover all, because there's so many things we could talk about, right? And I do want to know what it is that the society does. But before we sort of get into that, let's talk about some of the learning, I don't know what to say. I want to say disabilities, but differences that people have. So some of the things that I think that are maybe more obvious to the general public would be dyslexia. We hear about dyslexia a lot. Gifted we hear about, but I don't think people understand what that is. But there's a whole list of things, isn't there? Could you maybe...
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Yeah, could you maybe, if somebody's listening and they have no idea what learning differences are, what would you say to them?
Well, so some of the learning differences are neurological. They're things that happen in our brain. And Some of the most common one is dyslexia that we work with. It is generally the most common one in society. Some other ones are dysgraphia, dyscalculia, which is a misunderstanding or processing of numbers. There's executive functioning issues, auditory processing issues, attention deficit disorders. There are kids who are on the autistic spectrum who can be considered having different types of learning disabilities or differences. And I would say, the primary thing about that is just different ways that people take in and process information and understand how to relate it to other people or process it and organize it in their brain. And so we do have methodologies in a remedial instruction that we do that help us understand with any one or a combination of those types of disabilities or differences how to help people understand what's going on there, and regulate themselves and regulate the information that they're getting in a way that makes sense to them.
How would a parent know because sometimes we're just so busy, we rely on the school to pick up on everything. We think we know our kids, but we obviously aren't spending, 6 hours with them in a classroom setting. What are some things that families could be aware of that would, lead them to understand that maybe there are some challenges here that should be looked closer at?
Yeah. First, I would say, and also as a parent, if you have a suspicion, if you've got a gut feeling that something's up and you're just not quite sure how to crack it, reach out to us. We have, professionals. We can do intake. We can do informal assessments. We can do family coaching just to talk with the parent or guardian about what's going on and see, where you're at in this journey and if what you're thinking about might actually be worth investigating more. So parent gut feeling, I would always put up there.
Yeah,
and it really important
so true,
indicator,
right? And a lot of times we ignore our gut feeling because we're like, oh no, I'm just, overreacting, or I'm just too worried. Yeah.
You know your child, but at the same time, you're right. We don't always, I have 2 kids, and you don't always know where your child is supposed to be relative to other children and their developmental cycles and progression. And of course, there is no one right place for any child to be, right? There is a spectrum all the time, and we all have different strengths and challenges, no matter if we have a learning difference or not. So, but some things, that you might look out for, especially in the earlier years, might start picking up on things as early as age 3 to 5. There might be just, sometimes there can be social cues about kids being hesitant to interact with other people. There might be delays in being able to write, fine motor skill development. There might be auditory processing issues. You might notice more regulation issues with your child, as in they don't know how to organize themselves or, relate to a sequential pattern of movement, or just, and as you get into later years, it might be they just really don't like school, or they really just do not get math, or they really do not get reading, or they really cannot write. And then it can often turn into an anger or other types of behaviors to avoid that subject, which could be you just don't like math, but it could be that you actually have an issue with understanding math that can be resolved. And,
right.
We all have favorite subjects or not, but it can go deeper than that. So yeah, there's various different things to look out for. Asking your teachers, asking your GP or a pediatrician about things. And, we've picked up things even in our Early Risers program, which is for preschool age kids, where there are specific hearing or visual things that are happening in addition to a learning difference. And that's not something that the parent has picked up yet. And so we're able to refer people out for other services and diagnoses that aren't learning difference related, but could be contributing to that if there's an inability visually or auditorily to process information.
I feel like a lot of kids probably fall through the cracks when it comes to identifying some of the challenges that they might have. Like I think about when I was a kid, which was a long time ago now. There were no conversations like this about learning differences. It just didn't happen. You just showed up at school and you sort of did your thing. And now knowing what I know now and having my own kids, I can see that I had challenges as a child that were just sort of, rolled over, right? It was just like move ahead, and I wonder if it must still happen today, Rachel, right?
I think it still happens. I think obviously our teachers are doing a great job and everyone in the educational system is doing what they can, but I think we all realize that we're under-resourced, kind of across the board, and that's no particular person's fault, but you're not getting individual support in a classroom. And my parents, just think about growing up, my parents were both teachers. My dad worked in special education, as it was called at the time, and basically he was dealing with the kids with behavioral issues because it had gotten to the point where it was a behavioral issue, and it was the kids who had those challenges that needed more attention, that got more attention. But if you're a kid, and we work with a lot of kids who are wonderful, and kids with learning differences on average generally are more intelligent by measures of intelligence than an average child. And so there's a lot of kids that we see that because they are great students, because they're really well behaved and polite, they're not getting attention because there's such limited resources, and sometimes the teacher's attention have to go to the people who are crying out louder, But yeah, I do think there's kids who are slipping through the cracks, and that's why, I also say go with your gut and go with, if you're getting feedback that my kid's not reading at the right grade level, it could be that they're not spending enough time on reading. It could be that they don't like reading. It could be there's something else going on there, And
I think we're scared of that though sometimes, as parents, right? Because we're always groomed to, have this idea of everything's great and everything's got to be perfect and your kid's going to go to school and they're going to get through and all that. I can tell you it's not that way. It's very hard to raise children and have them go through school and be aware of what they're all doing and then looking for where they're struggling, right? And it's a lot of work for parents and teachers and caregivers and everybody, right? It really does take a village to make this happen and support everybody like they need to. So, you talked about a psych ed, and I'm maybe you could explain what that is, because I know what it is, but I'm sure there are a lot of people that have no idea what that is because they've never needed to know. But it's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be really important. So a psychoeducational assessment is done by a psychologist or somebody in their postdoc to be training and overseen by a psychologist to do a series of assessments and tests with a child to understand what is going on in the brain as best we can through the different methodologies we have to measure that. And generally a psych ed assessment will also bring in conversations with other people in a child's life. So there's consultations with other family members, might be, depending upon other medical practitioners that might be involved, or paramedical practitioners, interviews there to get more information. Any other level B or informal assessments that have been done educationally. There might be an individual education plan at that point, but probably not. It probably goes in the other order. So psych ed assessments can tell us a lot about what's going on and can also, give us a diagnosis of a learning disability and can help with, a journey and a roadmap for a family to work from. And I think the other thing about psych ed assessments that's worth noting up front is in BC right now, they're very hard to get. It takes years sometimes to actually get to a point where you're actively doing a psych ed assessment, and they can also be financially prohibitive for families. So we're talking about thousands of dollars here. I mean, I hear everything between $2,000 $3,000 to $4,000 or more, plus like the time that it takes to get one. So that can be a huge barrier for families who are looking for that type of information and support for their children.
It's a huge barrier. So it's a massive barrier. And I have been through the psych ed process a couple of times, and it's not easy to navigate for parents, and it's a very interesting thing to initiate yourself, right? Because we're used to hearing, oh, your child, but then when it's the parent thinking and then you go out and do it. Anyways, it's very interesting. But my question for you is so how does LDS help when it comes to these sorts of situations for families? Like, if I'm a parent who, knows that there's my gut's telling me that something is happening, or there's something I should maybe look into, maybe walk me through how LDS, supports families through this process.
Sure. So if you're a parent, have some suspicion, you don't have to have any other information necessarily at the time that you're approaching LDS, or you might have a whole host of IEP, psych ed, medical reports, etc., and have in the process for years. So wherever you are on the journey, we certainly welcome the initial call. And our intake team, like there's an application form where you would give us as much information as you can. And then our intake team meets with the family. Sometimes we meet concurrently with the student, depending upon the circumstances. And we interview about what you know about your child, what your concerns might be, what other type of information you're able to give us, whether it's report cards, anecdotes from teachers, letters from physicians, etc. And we likely then, like if we decide to progress with one-to-one support. So most of what we do is on a one-to-one individualized level, and it's all research-based. So we choose from a variety of curricula, and our educational team works to match each student with an instructor that has a specialization that works best for that child. So whether it's their age of learning, the type of subject matter that, like whether it's literacy, numeracy, executive functioning skills, etc., if they're at a grade 1 level or a grade 12 level, or they're an adult learner, we have people who have specializations in all of those areas. And then we craft a program that will work best to help remediate the issues that child is having. So we really focus in on where we can make big improvements and get kids up to grade level as fast as we can. We do monitoring of all that. We do progress monitoring, we do testing, and in the beginning of any interaction with a new student, we do assessments. So they have various kind of informal assessments that we use. DIBELS is the name of one of them. And then we can also go into a more rigorous assessment we use the KTA3, which is called a level B assessment, which is kind of just like the next best thing to a psych ed, which can give us a lot of information about what's going on with that child and help us tailor the programming for them. And then we do work in collaboration with a couple of other organizations, including UBC, to refer families for psych eds if that is something that they want to do, and we think it would be of value and they don't have one yet, then we're able to do that as well, and then bring that into the fold. And we had a bunch of postdocs and psychologists from UBC at our center for the past year and a half or so doing psych eds with some of our families.
Wow.
Which has been great.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so you are sitting on a bus right now. And I noticed that, like, before we started recording, I'm like, are you on a bus? And you're like, yes, I am. But this isn't just any bus, right?
No, this is called LDS Access. So it's a shuttle bus kind of size. This is the inside of it, and this is kind of one of our innovative COVID responsive programs, and it's our mobile classroom. We've got 3 different learning stations in here, and we developed this in response to the community need of having us come to you where you need it. So, we do have a learning center in East Van. We've got one in North Van. We've got online programming that we do throughout BC. But we also know that there's pockets in communities where transportation's a barrier, finances are a barrier, which is something that we try to eliminate across all of our programs. And, many other things. If you're a family juggling many jobs, a single parent juggling several jobs, you can't get your kid from school to our learning center. Online education might not be the best for them, or you might not even have the setup at home that you need to do that. So we developed LDS Access to go to community to deliver our specialized one-to-one education to the students in the community where they live. So it's been a wonderful initiative.
Yeah.
We worked with a couple local companies. So it's a green power electric vehicle. So we want it to be environmentally friendly because we've got it on and the lights on all the time when we're actually doing instruction in places. We worked with local designer Carson Ting of Chairman Ting to do the design. So the whole outside is actually wrapped as this mural, which it shows in allegory this bunny who goes on a learning journey. And, we're helping the bunny open up new doors and discover new things and achieve success and confidence in its life. And so that's what we're trying to do, and go to community and bring that learning journey to the most vulnerable learners in different pockets of areas. So we've been partnering with neighborhood houses and some community centers and some schools to be able to get that happening in their neighborhoods.
I love it. I love it. So, Rachel, on this show, we'd like to thank our guests for their time. And we do that by asking our guests to choose a Canadian nonprofit organization. And we will give them $500 in your name. And you chose the Urban Native Youth Association, which supports Indigenous youth on their journeys by amplifying and celebrating their voices. So I just want to let you know that we are giving them $500 in your name. And I really appreciate you choosing the Urban Native Youth Association. So thank you for that.
Thank you for allowing us to help support another organization doing great work in the community.
Right. And this is what it is. Like what I just said, it does take a village, and it's there. We need the LDSs, and we need the Urban Native Youth Associations and all of the different groups that are working on the same initiatives that help help our young learners. And to help them be supported, because school's hard enough as it is. And then once you throw in something that maybe takes down your confidence or, really causes some struggle and stress in school, learning becomes just the last thing on someone's list of things to do when they're struggling so much. So,
but that is primarily what we're doing, really, is building confidence and self-esteem, and making sure that kids are enjoying school, that's not the barrier to their success, that they don't have to worry about that in addition to all the other challenges that young children and youth have in their lives right now. So that's what motivates everybody who works with us and really makes a big difference, and the reason we've been able to bring so many partners and funders on board, from TELUS to our social robotics program, and we're partnered with University of Waterloo and everything on that, because we're all so motivated to transform lives, to see the directional change we can make in these children, and how empowered they feel and how confident they feel, when they're skipping out the door at the end of, I achieved this, and I feel proud of myself. And it's such a fundamental, important building block to have that, and to make sure that we're reaching kids as young as possible too, so that we can keep them on that trajectory, from the early years on. So it's been wonderful.
So, if a parent's listening right now and their child is in their teens and they're thinking, oh gosh, maybe it's too late for my kid, and I should have noticed something sooner, and maybe this is what the challenge is. What do you say to those parents who are worried that they didn't catch it soon enough, or that they've made a mistake, or they're feeling, bad about not seeing what maybe is obvious to other people?
I would say I understand if people feel guilty or bad, but there's always something we can do. We have such a variety of programs. We have ones that are targeted specifically for teenagers in remedial education, but also in social skills. We've got a teen transition program from elementary school to high school. We've got one that's from high school to university, or vocational training or job skills training. And we've just got so many different methodologies. Like our assistive technology studio offers all sorts of interesting ways to engage, especially the youth and the teenage learners in exciting ways to learn, right? And that's kind of the point of bringing in a lot of the different things that we have, is that not everybody learns the same. That's why we're here. But different things excite us. And we have spring camps and summer camps for young kids as a way of introducing play and experimentation and storytelling and things like that into the learning, as well as all the social skills and the social emotional learning for kids with learning differences. So they're feeling like they're in their same peer group, but they have new ways to get excited about things. And so back to the question about teenagers, call us. It's never too late. We have all sorts of things that we can help with, and including the family coaching piece, which I think is really important for guardians and parents. We can talk with you about, what is going on for you, and how can we help you support your child? How can we help you be an advocate for your child in the educational system? Because it's not straightforward. It's not something, that you can pick up a manual for and understand how to navigate all these things. And of course, all parents are busy and they have so many other things on the go, and there's so many emotions that come into this. So let us help you cut through that and, get some skills and tools and resources to be a great advocate for your child, regardless of what age they're at, and set them up for success going forward. Like that's our job. And we have so many experts on staff, masters and PhDs and special education and behavioral interventionists and speech and language pathologists. Like, we have a very comprehensive offering of services, and we'd love to support any family, throughout BC. We work throughout BC, so we invite anyone to call us.
It's pretty incredible talking to you, because I had no idea that LDS existed. As I mentioned, I've been down this path a little. It's new to our family, and it's overwhelming. It really is. And not only is it overwhelming, you've got the part where you have to learn as the adult, what all these terms mean. And like you were talking about executive functioning. I don't know what that means. Yeah. What does it mean?
So, how, I don't know if you remember in school, but they always used to call the mitochondria the powerhouse of the cell. So I think of executive functioning as the management system of the brain. So it helps us order things. It helps us organize things. It helps us interact with other people. It helps us regulate some of our emotions. That's the type of, and I had the same question even like when I was joining LDS. I'm like, I know what these things are, but I don't necessarily know the labels or the names that we have for them. So yeah,
it's
executive functioning, management system of the brain. There's all sorts of overlaps too that go along with, other things. A lot of things are, the technical term is like comorbidity, which I think is a bit of a weird one, but there's a lot of associations with stuff. So kids or adults who have ADHD, for example, have a difficult time with executive functioning. That's kind of something that overlaps.
I see. Okay. So yeah. And I mean, so there's a lot to learn on that side for the adults, that are trying to support their child or the person that they care for. And then you have the relationship with the child. And that is a whole other ballgame, because we all know as parents or caregivers, grandparents, when you're trying to get your child to do some extra tutoring or read some extra or whatever it might be, it can be met with a lot of emotion and challenges. And so again, you mentioned the family counseling, is that something that they would help with too? When if a parent is struggling with how do I, get some excitement around doing homework and reading and tutoring and or whatever it is that my child needs.
Yeah, there's different strategies for that we can try. I mean, we're not going to guarantee that, every 16-year-old stops rebelling what their parents tell them to do. But we do have a lot of people on staff, like I mentioned, who've got a lot of expertise and a lot of decades behind them of dealing with this, and are also parents themselves. And so we understand all of the mix of emotions and things that can come along with this and the struggles. And so we would try to be a very empathetic organization, but really empower people. We're empowering the students, we're empowering the families, we're empowering your community to set all these kids up for success, because that's what's going to really change lives. That's what's going to change all the, the outcomes for them in a positive trajectory of wherever it is they want to go. If that doesn't need to be post-secondary, it doesn't need to be anything. It's just to be fulfilled, right? And to know that they are worthy and can succeed in whatever it is that they want to choose to succeed. We can give them the skills and tools to do that.
I love it. I love it. Rachel, thank you so much for your time. I just want to let everyone know that the website is ldsociety.ca. That's ldsociety.ca. You can also follow on Instagram at ld-society and Twitter at ld-Vancouver. And you're moving over to your robot to say goodbye.
I'm going to say goodbye.
Oh my gosh, he's so cute.
So this is our social robot, one of our 2 social robots, the QT. And they're one of the things that we get to integrate into a lot of our one-to-one sessions.
Oh my God.
And have a research project specifically on QT and its use with kids with learning differences.
I love it. QT, thank you so much. Rachel, thank you so much.
Tamara. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.